Welcome to Prototyping 1. This course is part of the Design Coder certificate offered through the APT program. My name is Mark Bonasso and I'll be your instructor for the semester. This course is a foundational course when it comes to approaching design for digital products. And I want to talk to you a little bit about, give you an overview of why it's important, what some of the aspects and elements of the discipline of prototyping are, the design process, and that there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. When you hear the term prototyping, a lot of things come to mind. I'm sure whether it's in the physical product world or the digital product world, but there's a whole lot more kind of going on behind the scenes that we're going to explore before you actually get to crafting visual prototypes that you're going to see on the digital screen, and so I want to delve into and talk a little bit about that. So in the first module, we're going to be looking at something called the goal-directed design process, and the textbook for this course, About Face, really unpacks what that process is. It's very much a user-centered design process where we're not so much focused on task-oriented design, but we're focused on users and what the user's goals are and the user experience. After all, one of the things that you'll start to see in this course and in other courses in this particular certificate and perhaps in other areas of design that you may find yourself in is that it's more and more becoming about the user and not so much about the product. In other words, the product, by focusing on the user and the user experience and what the user wants and what their goals are and their desires, we can craft a better product, in this case a digital product, that actually will in turn end up becoming something that users actually really love because it's meeting their needs, it's allowing them to accomplish their goals. It sort of becomes a part of their everyday life, so to speak. So we take a sort of a deep dive into some of the ins and outs of what make up the goal-directed design process. But like I said, at its core, we're looking at an extreme focus on the users. We're going to be looking at things like personas, which are sort of a fictitious but representative model of different user groups, and what they want and what they desire and what their goals are. And then we're going to be looking at user scenarios and how do these users go about their everyday life, and where do the needs arise that they have where that intersect with what this particular digital product that you're designing could help meet. And so as those things begin to come together, you begin to see that it's a crucial step in the overall prototyping process, the process of designing and developing a digital product. So in the next module, competency module, now that we've sort of established what is the goal-directed design process and what are some of the elements that go into that, how do we approach that, how do we step into that design process, and how does that become our thinking and our methodology as we begin to adopt it, is now we're going to be look at, okay, so let's take a look at our users and not only our users, but let's take a look at for instance, what are the existing products that they're using, and this is where sort of the first, I'd say the first type of prototyping can come into play, and that's sketching. We can sketch paper and pencil, we can sketch on a whiteboard, you can sketch on a napkin at a restaurant, just about anywhere, to get ideas down quickly. And that's kind of the idea behind sketching, and then how we can use sketching to help identify problems, actually solve particular user interface issues. And so this idea of sketching, prototyping in a sketching format or in that level of design fidelity, is that we're going to sketch to convey ideas. This does not mean you need to be an illustrator and a phenomenal illustrator or an incredible artist, even though you may be. that'll help your sketches. But in the long run, what we're looking at here when we're talking about sketching for prototyping, we're looking at quick ways that we can convey information and ideas and potential solutions. And so in this module, we're going to dive into utilizing a sketching method to help uncover existing problems with existing products, using it to help storyboard out user scenarios to kind of get our heads in their heads and find out what life is like for them, because a lot of times goals and ideas are going to spawn from that process. And then also thinking of new innovative ideas and ways that we can solve particular problems or provide particular solutions within a particular software application or digital product by sketching various ideas, getting quick feedback, iterating through the various ideas that you and your teammates might have. And so that would be the where sketching becomes sort of that first layer in the prototyping process. So now we're moving into competency module 3. This is where you're going to start to move into the digital realm, so to speak. Now you're allowed to approach the computer and actually use software to start to begin to build your interfaces. But at this point, before we get into that, is sort of establishing that, okay, we've looked at defining user goals, uncovering problems, fleshing out scenarios, and looked at various sort of interactive behaviors that we might want to incorporate within our particular solution or product. Now what we want to do is take those ideas, move into the computer using a software design program of choice, and begin to create what's called a wireframe or a series of wireframes, which is a digital representation, sort of a mock-up at a very low fidelity, design fidelity. Think of a skeleton structure, a sort of a lot of lines and boxes and words and annotations and things like that, representative things on the screen, or things I should say that represent various user interface elements on the screen. And by its very nature, creating wireframes lends itself to very quick, rapid iterations through different versions of the screens that you're developing. And the whole reason for this, moving into this next level of design fidelity in the prototyping stage, is to begin to actually flesh out what are these actual website screens, mobile app screens, whatever it might be. What are they actually going to look like? What is a series of screens going to be, or a screen flow, for instance, is a user going to encounter when they're using this particular product? And then what are the different things that I need to account for? What are the different steps, interim steps? What are the, is a modal window going to pop up, a dialog box of some sort? What's going to happen when the user clicks on this, that kind of thing. Again, we're not getting into actual interactivity yet, but we're in the planning stages, so that as we begin to build out these screens, these wireframes, we can visualize very clearly what it is that we're presenting to the users, and we can begin to sort of refine that process before we, in those particular artifacts, before we move into actually adding some interactivity to these wireframes, so that we can actually test them with users. So next up is going to be competency module 4, where we're going to be diving into making our prototype assets, our wireframes, interactive, and there's no coding involved. So in case any of y'all are concerned about that at this point, we're not coding in this class. The way that we add interactivity to our wireframes in this course is as we're going to be using a particular program. It's an online app called Envision, and it's a powerful tool for incorporating all your wireframes, or you may even have more high fidelity finished design comps, not for our course but for something else, and you bring them, import them into this program. What this program does is allow you to add certain behaviors to your buttons, allows you to organize your screens and simulate interactivity, so that just by point and click, right? So that you can quickly and easily set up a scenario, a user interface scenario with all of the screens that you've created. And create the interactivity, the simulated interactivity, I should say, so that you can then send, eventually send these prototypes, these interactive prototypes that you've created to potential users, and get actual feedback from them on what was it like for them to try to accomplish certain things, to step through your screens, to use your prototypes, and then give you feedback. Because until you start to begin to involve users in this process, and again, users in the real world are companies that are learning more and more about the importance of user experience design. They're incorporating the user from the very beginning, and they're part of the process throughout the entire life cycle of your project, and as it should be. But if you don't involve the user, then you end up just designing for yourself, and you have no idea what kind of effect your product is going to have on other people. And so so this is the module where you begin to step in and learn to utilize a program like InVision to bring your screens together that you've created already, begin to actually mock up, or I should say stitch together, and add the interactivity to develop and create this interactive prototype using a program like InVision, so that for the next module is where we're going to get into talking about actually testing our prototypes. All right. And so for the last competency module, competency module 5, is where now you're going to take your interactive prototypes that you've built, and you're actually going to test those with other users. You're going to send your prototypes. Thankfully, it's all done via the web. You can email links to your prototypes that you create in this program called InVision. It's very easy for anybody that's got access to a web browser to click on the link and go in and actually test your prototypes and send you feedback or input feedback real time. And so in this module, we're going to focus on that. We're going to focus on taking what you've developed and actually sending that to other classmates, people that can test what you've designed, what you've developed, as a user going through a scenario, and then they can give you feedback as to what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and that becomes extremely valuable feedback to you as the designer, as you're striving to create something that is highly usable, that an interface that becomes sort of second nature and is not getting in the way is a fantastic interface. And those are all the kinds of interfaces that we all love. And so the more we can get feedback from users, and the more we can refine our prototypes and our designs and make them more usable, and make them to where they help our users accomplish their goals more and more, the better our end result and the product, the digital product that we're developing is going to be. And so with Module 5, that's going to be the focus, as well as a little bit of live collaboration with other classmates, which you can also do within the InVision app. So I hope that this overview of the different competencies that you'll be working through in the Prototyping 1 class have been helpful. And there'll be lots of information as you go throughout the course to help you along the way and to reinforce a lot of these things that I've just barely touched on this time. But I hope you enjoy the class. Look for my office hours in the schedule or in the actual Blackboard course, and I'll see you guys online.